Hello and welcome to the Dee Code. This is a lecture series, an e-course that is about the secret foundations of the modern political and magical worlds. It is focused on a character named Dr. John Dee, who was a 16th century alchemist and scholar. So did you know John Dee was a scholar and advisor to Queen Elizabeth I, and he spoke with heads of state throughout Europe. He coined the term the British Empire. He was instrumental in the development of science. He worked tirelessly to transcribe a system of magic through a painstaking scrying process called Enochian Magic. He may have placed codes within Shakespeare that have astounding mathematical significance, and there are clear codes in his work now, but they have not been decoded or documented. So this is an image of Dr. John Dee. This is a painting that was featured in the Smithsonian magazine that revealed a hidden ring of skulls underneath. So this is a sort of invitation for you right now to sense into both the apparent meaning of things and the hidden meaning of things. Understanding, this image is of Queen Elizabeth I with many different political people surrounding her. This is her, like a court. There's scientists, and John Dee is performing some sort of magic in front of her. So this shows the significance of who this person is and what's happening, as well as sort of foreshadowing the encoding of multiple dimensions of meaning. So this is important. This means something. I wanted to just invite a sense of mindfulness right now. So this image is from the Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Richard Dreyfuss is the main character, and he saw a UFO, received telepathic messages, and we know after the fact there's telepathic messages inviting him to Devil's Tower. In this image, he is trying to figure out what's in his mind, and so he's just building this image out of mashed potatoes. He'll go on to build it out of dirt in his living room, and he goes, oh, this is Devil's Tower, I have to go there. So this is the sort of journey I've been on. I go, this is important, this means something. But I don't know where we're going. This is the moment where we're at, saying this is all the material we need to understand there's an underlying code within all of this material. What is it? I don't know. So I'm going to invite you to stay grounded and be mindful. I engage in mindfulness practice as a way to stay grounded. I spend a lot of time thinking about this, but I understand I have to come back to the present. It's important to acknowledge we don't even know what the code means, if there is a code, or even who sent it. So it's really important to understand that. These things may look like codes, but not actually be. So please be mindful about engaging with that. And then finally, I really need to acknowledge that I'm actually following dreams and angel communications. I am not following intellectual puzzles. I'm not sitting here going, oh, there's this code that says this. I say, my dreams are telling me to do this. I've done the heptarchical prayers, and the angels tell me this information, and they tell me to present it to you in this way. So I'm following that, not necessarily deducing these codes and sharing this like an academic. I'm actually sharing this as a practitioner of Enochian Magic from someone who believes, I believe in this work. I use the prayers literally. I had an interaction with what I understand to be angelic consciousness that tells me there's codes in here. This is important. This means something. So what are the codes? What might they look like? So we have the example here, the Bard code. This is put forward by Alan Green. You can get to it at tobeornottobe.org. He discovered hidden codes within Shakespeare's sonnets and John Dee's diaries to sort of correlate how he was involved. That express there's a clear conspiracy behind literary works like Shakespeare's sonnet, like the King James Bible, and that point to Enochian tables, these Enochian tables. So it is, these are keys actually to a much greater cultural encoding experience from the Renaissance on. They express hidden geometries and sophisticated mathematics associated with the Great Pyramids, as well as physical constants that we have just sort of discovered. And they clearly point to the Enochian tables. So if you want to really exercise your brain and get your brain into the mode of discovering these Renaissance codes, which is multimodal, not just math, not just geometry, not just literary, it's all of them. It requires you to have this sort of multimodal understanding of the world, and so to practice that, you can work with Alan Green at his website, tobeornottobe.org. The next thing you need to know about is scrying. So scrying is the practice of looking into a crystal ball or a reflective surface or something like that to see the future, to talk to angels, to do any number of things. So the image here is of Dr. John Dee's magic mirror, his crystal ball, and several other talisman that we'll talk about later in this series used in the scrying ritual. John Dee was what is termed the magical operator. Edward Kelly was a psychic and scryer. So John Dee would sit back, he would pray, he would open the space, he'd offer the materials, he'd make the talisman, and then he would have Edward Kelly sit in front of it, look into it, and he would write down what he was seeing, and Dee would question Kelly, who would question angels, and back and forth, that produce the works we now know as the Spirit Diaries, the 5 Books of Mystery, De Heptarchia Mystica, etc. This is like hypnosis, actually, and one of the reasons why I'm looking into it. It is really important to know from our understanding of hypnosis and trance that it occasionally produces veridical information, but is culturally significant all of the time that you engage in it, but it has irrational content. So we can't take it literally, we can't take it on face value, we can't even assume that new information is coming in. This may be an unconscious thing that involves emotion, feelings, different experiences that are expressing novel configurations of that information. Sometimes we do get veridical information, meaning you go into trance, you can see the future, you can see out of body or whatever, and then you can get information. You might interact with a non-human intelligence that tells you something, you can go verify it. That sort of thing happens, but that's not the bulk of it, and that's not actually reliable in terms of the communication. I would say the greater sense of reliability in terms of these sorts of communications is the fact that they require discernment and interpretation. Another thing really important to know is that all of this material, all of this experience around scrying is actually associated with early cryptography. There really isn't a clear precedent for scrying for the sake of scrying and then receiving all of these codes and things like that. It's actually it makes more sense to understand this as cryptography rather than as a novel system of language, primarily because of how trance works and how the literary precedents unfolded. Right, so Dee and Kelly use this system to produce what we now call Enochian Magic. This is an example of some of the records that John Dee has. This image is from De Heptarchia Mystica, which is a recompilation of his journals. So he wrote down what happened. He would receive these grids of letters that then became circles, that become other things, and so on. They clearly involve codes. There are codes throughout the entire book that they want you to engage with to be able to derive angel names from all of these different codes. That is part of Enochian Magic. So when we say, oh, okay, that's actually how you engage with it if you open your eyes to what is there. There's enough clues on everything to really say, hey, there are codes here. This system has been used as a framework for magic ever since, but has not been publicly decoded. I have not found anyone that says, hey, this is the meaning of these things. They say, hey, there's significance. They can expand meaning in many different dimensions. People dive into these codes and they find order within them. They find higher order levels of order within them even that imply geometries and mathematics and linguistics, but it's never been decoded altogether where we go, this is what it means. And we may not actually get there. The other thing we need to talk about is this might be the precedent for non-human intelligence contact in the modern world. So this may be the most important historic precedent for ET contact, non-human intelligence contact, angelic contact in recorded modern history. This is a foundational experience within the history of the British Empire. This formed the British Empire. This dialogue between John Dee, Edward Kelly, and angels really did help inform the British Empire. So if these codes don't bring us to an understanding of ET, non-human intelligence, angelic contact, then they will still bring us to a significant cultural and political and magical understanding. And then what's really close to my heart is that the Dee and Kelly scrying activity is a precedent for hypnosis. So Dee was like the early hypnotist, Kelly was like the hypnotee, and they use this system of trance to have communications that are phenomenologically, right, they are nearly identical to the communications we're receiving now when we do hypnosis with ET contactees and abductees. They present similar information, and I know this because I've done this. I know this because I've researched this. I know this because I've compiled all of the records kind of around this and looked into it, and it's consistent. And I have a lot of resources about that in other video series that you can check out. But really, Dee and Kelly is the precedent for hypnosis. It is not mesmer. Mesmer is the application of this greater stream of hypnosis that has its basis actually in ancient Greek times or even further. But mesmer was just one special adaptation of that stream, and we've identified sort of medicalized animal magnetism as hypnosis, but actually that comes out of a much richer tradition that has its impact felt all around the world, and that's why I'm looking into it, because it's actually very important. The hypothesis I bring to the table after looking into all of this is that hypnosis is misidentified shamanic dream work. So hypnosis in the service of ET contact, let's say, or non-human intelligence contact, that might be angel communication, that might be telepathy, that might be regression, that might be out of body. Any of that stuff is what looks to be shamanic dream work. Dee and Kelly serve as the historic precedent within the Western materialist empirical empire, right? They're the precedent for that. So what is shamanic dream work? I looked to the American Psychological Association publications to help me understand what shamanic dream work is, because the APA stands for mainstream consensus reality. And so there's a rich kind of thread of papers published by the APA in various journals and books that really describe shamanic dream work. It starts with Krippner, Stanley Krippner, who did a lot of dream telepathy studies. He says there's anomalies within dreams: dream telepathy, dream sharing, and dream apportation, and dream healing. All of these things were miraculous things that happen and are unexplained by our current models of dreaming. What is the model of dreaming that explains it? He says shamanic dream work. Check that out. So then in 2014, Laughlin and Rock published a paper called What Can We Learn from Shamanic Dream Work? And they basically point to a major distinction in the world: the monophasic versus polyphasic cultures. Monophasic cultures are like monotheistic cultures that honor only one god. Polytheistic cultures honor many gods. Monophasic cultures honor one phase of consciousness. Polyphasic cultures honor multiple phases of consciousness. The phases of consciousness are something like dream, sleeping, waking, ritual, ceremonial space, magical spaces of consciousness. And they have a system for working with that, right? They acknowledge the reality, but they also acknowledge that these communications or experiences require discernment, interpretation, and may engage in different ways than just physically. So we're divorcing the notion that physical things are real, objective things are real, and everything else is unreal. We're saying it's all real, but the way we speak about it needs to be different. We can't speak about subjective things in the way we speak about objective things. And that's not a problem because they're all real. We're not implying that subjective things are unreal. So that's what's happening with a monophasic, polyphasic distinction. It's important to know that traditional dream work, right, these polyphasic cultures, they represent about 90% of the cultures on Earth. That shamanic dreaming is a universal phenomenon, that you don't have to go to a specialized person. You actually engage in shamanic dream work as soon as you share a dream when you wake up. Wonder what it means, wonder if it predicts the future, wonder if you talk to someone. That's shamanic dream work. It's essential to your humanity. And we see that actually, that dream work and dream studies extends beyond written history. So now we have a problem that this hypothesis emerges out of, and why I'm thinking about this, because we are actually engaged right now as a culture in non-human intelligence contact. This can be through angel communications, ancestors, nature spirits, extraterrestrial beings. But our culture is actually engaged with this greater community in the world that may just be dream, might be collective unconscious, but also might be physical beings in extraordinary spacecraft. We don't actually know. So we're engaging with that. We're seeing cultures come this way. And we look to our historic precedent and say, when we went over to the New World, we genocided, we persecuted, we burnt books. That is actually the work of a monophasic culture. Monophasic cultures are associated with persecution and genocide, primarily because they cannot tolerate multiple different perspectives. So we assume, hey, those beings out there are monophasic, but they're actually not. They're polyphasic because they're talking to us psychically, physically, emotionally, in ways that are sophisticated spiritually. And you can get to that when you look to what experiencers actually say. So it's clear to me that we're wounded by this colonization experience, and that unless we resolve that wounding, we will always be afraid of the angels. The angels are here, the ETs are here, all of these things are here, but we'll be terrified of them and push them away because we don't want to integrate this healing. So I say we need to heal, and we need to dream again. And the way that this culture can do that is perhaps by solving these codes. These codes are very intellectual, they're very mental. You can solve them. They have resonances with physical constants that are verifiable. They have resonances with the Great Pyramids. We engage in these things. We can actually find predictions, verifications, and things like that. That's what it's showing us, right, in terms of the Bard code and these other codes. So I say, let's actually do that with this level, the intellectual mind, so that we can start to dream again as a people. All right, I wanted to call out the Book of Galactic Light. I engaged in this material as a way to study hypnosis, the Dee and Kelly work. I became inspired to go very deep into it by way of extraordinary encounters with UAPs and telepathic beings and all sorts of stuff. But I needed to study this from a Western liberal arts and integral studies perspective. So I called together a study group. We went through a lot of material in order to form the kind of understanding, the intellectual context of this work. I then went through the Call of the Aethers, which is an Enochian magical ritual. I transcribed what I saw as the scryer, and I compiled what I call the Book of Galactic Light. And this is a really great way to engage with some of the material, to learn about the history, to get a kind of basis. It will take you through some of the things you need to know about Western liberal arts tradition in order to understand this work. You can get to that at cosmicdreamsanctuary.org/book. So that was last year. This year I'm working on another book called De Heptagognosis Mystica, understanding that book may have been kind of a representative of space, now thinking about De Heptarchia Mystica as a dimension of time. So this is another series of Enochian magical rituals called the Heptarchical Workings. And so I started to explore that. I found a book called New Recreations with Magic Squares, which is all about magic squares, numeric magic squares, not planetary magic squares or whatever. And I realized that these highly complex squares that they can have, I don't know, 3 to dozens of columns and rows. They all add up to the same number. You go through only one number of the integers each, and it's like corners add up, different patterns add up, and you can draw immense complexity from very, very simple rules. And I thought, that's what they did. If the angels aren't doing it one by one, they know the algorithm, they know the geometric forms, they know the simple seed of that forms all of this immense complexity. So let's go to that simple seed instead of being lost in this complexity, is what I thought. I was inspired to produce an art book involving geometry, gematria, magic squares, sigils, as a sort of Enochian primer to go, hey, these are all the things, all the figures, all the different ways of thinking about things that you need to engage with in order to be able to understand what Enochian is. That's what I need to do, because I don't understand exactly what Enochian is at all. And I thought, hey, there's resonances within these streams of human traditions, of documented human traditions, like Cornelius Agrippa, like Trithemis, like all of these things. The Enochian working did not happen in a vacuum and was not a novel presentation from the angels to Dr. John Dee. At most, it was a novel reconfiguration of what was already in Dee's library, which was over 3,000 books at the time. Like, clearly it relied on human traditions which involve long-standing interactions with non-human intelligences, angels or whatever, but clearly that was the way that this came about. It did not happen in a vacuum. So let's go back to those traditions, understand what they have to say, and then use that to understand the new contributions these angels had in their communications with Dee. And so I was guided to contemplate cryptography via the Trithemis connection, and we'll talk about that. And I said, oh my God, when I started doing the oratory prayer in De Heptarchia Mystica, I had clear dreams and communications. I said, this is a code. This is encoded like Trithemis is encoded. Here it is. Here's some keys. I don't know where to go from there, but I wanted to offer that. And the angels also said, share this before you go on. So that's what I'm doing. So what if? What if Enochian Magic has discernible codes? What if the codes have significance similar to the Bard code of universal mathematics and secret history? What if every magician is truly connected with magic, but the magic is incomplete without this understanding? What if we are meant to share this inquiry, knowledge, and codes together? What if the codes pointed to something that makes the distinction between coded and uncoded irrelevant? Right? What if that actually showed this to be the case? What would this mean about the truthfulness of Kelly's scrying? So there's a lot of what ifs here, and I think even if there were no code, even if there were no interactions with angels, this would be a historically and culturally significant inquiry. So I want to offer some acknowledgements before closing for the day. There's been a tremendous amount of dedicated work and scholarship. We'll go through some of the perspectives I rely on in a future video. But thank you to all the scholars who have really helped with this. This hypothesis does not diminish existing magical practice because it clearly works. I used existing magical practices to receive this message that there are codes. So obviously there's a paradox here, but that's really important to know. The codes are likely holistic in nature, meaning they engage multiple different levels of being and knowing, rather than just computational. Most of my points are inspired or derived from the works of others. This is really important to know. So there's references in the slides, and I have a whole video about all the perspectives I look to. And I hope to inspire inquiry because I don't have the solutions. And I hope to inspire shared inquiry because I really don't appreciate people holding these things back based on an assumption that there is power in them, or people aren't ready, or it's dangerous. I think that's actually arrogant by the practitioners who do not understand the system to really hoard this sort of understanding. I say anyone who is interested and capable of engaging with the material deserves to have all of the material available to them. That's one of the reasons why I offer the Book of Galactic Light as a free download if you click a link, right? I ask for your email sometimes, but that's really one of the reasons why it should be sort of a free and open inquiry, I believe. So this is part of a video series. It is part of an e-course. We're covering the topics of introduction, the significance of this work, scrying and channel work, fundamental text, relevant perspectives, Enochian Magic, coded language, derivation, the Heptarchia code, and next steps. So these are all the videos coming up. They all have practices associated with them that you can actually get to when you sign up for the e-course on the website. But if you're looking at this at like YouTube or something, you'll just see the videos. There's all that information there. There's a lot of stuff. So please know that you can take this at your own pace. Yeah. All right, so now concluding here with some invitations to action. So as part of the homework, I'm going to invite you to review the history of England from 1500 to 1600s. It's really important to know who John Dee is, Edward Kelly, what's going on politically, who Queen Elizabeth I is, that sort of thing. So review that history. You might want to check out Jason Liu's book regarding that. Then I want you to review the classical liberal arts. We've got the quadrivium, arithmetic, geometry, music, and astronomy, and the trivium, grammar, logic, and rhetoric. So check out what the classic liberal arts are. You can check out St. John's College in Annapolis, Maryland, or Santa Fe. I went to that school. It is one of the best traditional classical liberal arts education there are. They talk about all of the stuff you need to know, so they have a syllabus and things like that you can get to. But please do review that, because this will not make sense to you if you are coming from a point of view of computation, linguistics, programming, from the modern mindset, the modern educated mindset where you're trained to do a job or a specialization. You need to be a Renaissance person with a wide range of activities. Engage in mindfulness, engage in art, engage in music, engage in all of these things, because that's the domain and way in which John Dee engaged with these things. And then you can join the e-course on deecode.org, that's deecode.org, for guided meditations, deeper dives into these topics, practice videos, and Q&A. Once again, connections for you, from me to you, deecode.org. I've got cosmicdreamsanctuary.org, that is Dreamwork and hypnosis based on Western and mindfulness traditions. There's also D-SETI, which explores the notion and hypothesis of ET, or non-human intelligence, contact, and dreams. The whole thing around hypnosis as misidentified shamanic dreamwork is offered there. And then finally, Dreamwell, which is a mobile app to help you sleep, dream, and be well. It has mindfulness training, a dream journal, and guided meditations. You can get to that at dreamwellbewell.com. And that really is a great way to start your dream practice in mindfulness. So thank you for being here, and I look forward to continuing this inquiry with you.